Welcome inside the Daily Universe Sports Talk. My name's Philip Tonks, and I'm joined today by Zach Lewis. Zach, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Caleb. Thanks so much for having me on. It's a good day to come on and talk about BYU sports.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. And so to start off our first topic today, I wanted to ask you a quick question, Zach, about just about your dating life a little bit. Not too
Okay.
personal, but just a question about that kind of relates to what we want to go into today. And so, have you ever had like a first date that went really well? And then a couple days later, you either go on a second date or that second date doesn't happen and just kind of crashes and burns. And you're just like, what the heck? Turns out you're just really disappointed after an emotional high, and then you're just done.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good question. Okay, yeah, I definitely had one my sophomore year here. I think there's this girl from my soccer team, my intramural soccer team that I really liked, and we went out once and it went really well. Like everything was flowing, I felt like both people were having a really great time. And then we went on another date the next week, and it was like night and day. It was like all of a sudden it didn't feel like we had any chemistry, and it just felt like we felt like strangers again. It just was super awkward, and it really didn't go anywhere after that. So I definitely have experienced that for sure.
When I was thinking about it, and I was like, this totally relates to where BYU men's basketball is at right now. They're coming off a big win against Iowa State on Saturday, and then Tuesday they just absolutely laid an egg. And so we just wanted to go into the Iowa State game from last week, this first talk about that. And so last week I mentioned that the defense on AJ was going to be, or the defense for AJ on Momcilovic was going to be very important and was going to be a key for BYU to win the game. And especially that, as well as that defense on Boop on Jefferson. And that turned out to be the case. BYU played really good defense against Iowa State, and it seems like they were just getting out in transition and getting pretty easy buckets against them. Zach, what were your thoughts on BYU's game against Iowa State there?
Yeah, I mean, you absolutely nailed it. I mean, I think the key to that game was AJ's defense, right? He put up an absolutely monster defensive performance, right? I mean, he, from the beginning of the game to the very end of the game, was just playing with absolute intensity on defense and really proving that that is something that he has in his portfolio is to be an elite defender as well. So, and I think not only did his energy do a really good job shutting down Monklemovich, but his intensity, I think, was infectious to the rest of the team, and I think the rest of the team played so much more intense with him because he was, just really priding himself on his defensive responsibility in that game. Uh, I just think that that was probably the biggest key to that game.
Hmm. And I think specifically one thing I mentioned last week was presence of the interior with Kada and Boop. I really think our interior presence against Iowa State was very strong and very like they just showed their presence against Iowa State and was able to out rebound them and really just fill it on the boards. Um, and then we just saw the effort there on Saturday, and that effort didn't really manifest itself on Tuesday night against UCF. And Zach, what were some of the issues you saw against UCF on Tuesday night?
Yeah, I mean, obviously defensively, it was like a completely different team playing out there. I think from an intensity standpoint, it wasn't as intense. But I think also like our defensive schemes set up by Kevin Young uh, were just not really fitting for the kind of game that UCF came in and played. Kevin Young tried to play a lot of zone defense and a lot of different zone reads that just didn't really pan out because the UCF team was able to knock down their open threes, and consistently there was just an open man. And the shooters, they made their shots, and BYU got punished for their effort and for their schemes just throughout that game. What did you kind of see as BYU's biggest problem?
Think in particular, when you go 11 of 16 from three and you're leaving shooters wide open. I know UCF was running a certain action where they'd have shooters come off of screens like on the baseline and they'd have these wide open threes in the corner. and it was very confusing because you'd see whoever is down there at the near the basket who would cut too far in, and there was just shooters that would just walk right by him. And so I think that zone was really exposed by UCF. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about Demas Folks a little bit. He had 26, and it looked like he was hitting very contested shots over Rob Wright and against Rob Wright, and that was very much a struggle for our defense was to contain him as well. Um, when it comes to that performance against UCF, Zach, are you concerned at all for the rest of the season moving forward after that performance?
I absolutely am. I think we have.
BYU has two tough road games against West Virginia first, and then Cincinnati. And as we know in the Big 12, no night is an off night, right? Like you don't have any rest games for this team. So these are both teams that have uh, weapons that can hurt you. I mean, West Virginia has four guys who average double figures, with Hunter Huff, who averages 15 a game. So these are games and these are hungry teams on the road who want a win. And I think BYU has to really step up their intensity if they want to win these games, especially being down so many players to injury. What do you think BYU's keys to winning these games are?
I think moving forward, we're really going to have to see a concerted effort on the defensive end that we didn't see, frankly, against UCF out of this team. West Virginia, like you mentioned, has four guys that average double figures. Cincinnati's got a really quick guard that's kind of hurt BYU in the past. His name's Day Thomas. And they're just coming off a win against Kansas not too long ago, where they beat them by 18 points. And Cincinnati is a very dangerous team as well. So containing Day Thomas, I think, will be very crucial for BYU. And they also have four guys who are averaging double figures. And so we're really going to have to bring our defensive intensity, or BYU is really going to have to bring their defensive intensity on this road trip. And so, in terms of like the defense, would you want to see BYU play more man, especially against Cincinnati and West Virginia moving forward?
I absolutely would. I think that when you look at the best teams defensively,
In college basketball, I mean, Houston always comes to mind to me, and you see what they play. I mean, they play the toughest man defense, I think, in college basketball, especially when you look at last year's team. And this year's team is good as well. It's just five guys who are, doing everything possible to stop their man from scoring, right? And, you have your schemes on who's going to switch where and whatever, but I think just playing man and being responsible for your defensive um,
assignment will really help a team defensively.
And I think, especially where we struggle to defend in transition and sometimes to rebound, man defense really helps in there because you know who you're trying to find in transition and you know who you need to find to box out to really become a complete defensive team. As well as, I think one thing we haven't really mentioned is BYU's role players have to play well on this road trip for BYU to win these games. I think players like Kosic and Boscovich and Kennard Davis need to knock down their open shots. They have to when they get their looks, when they get their chances, they have to convert, or else BYU will just fall short in the scoring column as well.
And I think I want to see more out of Rob Wright. He had those two games where he had 30 plus, and then these last two he's really struggled against Iowa State and UCF. And so I want to see Rob Wright take more, like, I want to say concerted looks. I want to say a bunch of the looks he took against UCF were very contested and very like, oh, I'm just going to throw it up and see where it goes. Where I'd like to see Rob Wright take more, get past his man and be able to just lay it in like that. Um, and I think that'll really help him out. Just kind of gain some of his confidence back up on this upcoming road trip.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good.
And so looking ahead, would you say this is like the most important road trip for BYU this season is to be able to is these games against Cincinnati and West Virginia?
I think yes and no.
I think um, some of the early on games against Clemson, um, in New York, and playing UConn, in Boston. Just because of the caliber of those teams, I think really were important with setting BYU in a position to be ranked in the top 25 for the entirety of the season. The way we competed in those games against the top teams, I think really set BYU up for success in the season. So I think those are really important. And then you kind of have it on the other end here where you're trying to determine your seeding right for the NCAA tournament. And I think these games are obviously crucial for seeding. And it's interesting, BYU is still favored to win every single one of their last three games. So we're not coming in as BYU is not coming in as an underdog. They're expected to win these games, but they'll kind of have a target on their back. So I think in terms of seeding for the tournament, these games are really important. But in terms of where the team ends up in this season, I think some of the earlier trips were maybe a little more crucial.
I totally get that. I think that loss against UCF is hopefully going to fire up some of the competitive nature from the roster and from the coaching
Yeah,
staff to be able to
yeah,
just
hopefully.
just be better going on to this road trip, which is a pretty important one.
Yeah,
And so last
absolutely.
night, I was able to watch some of the BYU women's basketball game against Arizona State, and it was a big road victory for them. They picked up a big road win, um, and they beat them for the second time this season. They came back from 13 points down at the half against Arizona State and outscored them 48-30 in the second half. They had about a 10-point lead going into like the last 5 minutes of the game, and were able to hold on to beat the Sun Devils down there.
Yeah,
Um, and it was a big victory for them. Did you watch any of the game last night?
yeah. I was able to catch some of
Of
it.
it and how, I mean, we always talk about how good Delaney Gibb is, right? Like,
Mhm.
Uh, she was the Big 12 Freshman of the Year last year. She continues to be the star player for this team. But how good is Olivia Hamlin? I mean, she has showed up as an absolute star this season for BYU women's basketball. I mean, just been consistently her effort defensively and getting steals and running the court. Um, she's a joy to watch on the court, and really, I think was the second piece that has allowed this team to really take the step up this season. I think Lee Kamard has done a great job with the team this season, taking a team that um, honestly was nowhere near the tournament last season and really making them kind of have a shot at getting into the tournament. Where do you think they're going to end up in terms of making it into the NCAA tournament or not?
And so, ESPN women's basketball bracketologist Charlie Cream listed BYU as one of his next four out, and that was before last night's win against Arizona State. And Arizona State was listed as the first team out in his latest bracketology. And so I think BYU is going to move up to potentially that first four out uh, territory, or maybe more in the bubble, I guess I could say. But they still have some work to do. Especially that loss against Cincinnati really hurt their resume at home. And so they have a lot of work that they need to make up in terms of wins in the Big 12 tournament, and especially upcoming against Colorado. Colorado is listed as one of the last four in his latest bracketology. And so picking up some of these bubble wins is going to be crucial for BYU to be able to make the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that Colorado game and
How big that's going to be here at home in the Marriott Center for senior night, um, to have the players fired up and really playing hard to earn themselves a spot in that tournament that I believe that they deserve for their performances this season.
Mhm. I wanted to bring something else up from last night's game that was really cool. Um, Sydney Benali is from the Navajo Nation, and she had a lot of family and support from the Navajo Nation there at the game last night. And so I saw this thing where she signed some shoes and threw them out to the fans, and I thought it was really cool that she's able to kind of give back to her community, and that she had all that support there last night's victory for BYU.
yeah, that's awesome. Covering women's basketball this
Season,
season.
I've seen lots of support from her across the board from different games and people with signs and different things for her heritage and just for the kind of culture and
unique perspective that she brings to this BYU team.
Mhm. So transitioning into BYU football, Zach, I know you've been tuned in with what's going on at the combine with Jack Kelly and Chase Roberts. How are things going with former BYU athletes at the combine?
Yeah, we just started the first
First day of the combine today was the first day in Indianapolis. Jack Kelly is um,
going through his kind of performance.
he's on the field today, doing different drills and skills tests and different things. It's a linebacker and other defensive players day today. Um, I think Jack Kelly is probably the top prospect for a BYU player to get drafted this year. It looks like he would probably go in
Uh, third to fifth round.
pick to a team. It's looking like right now. He obviously has an opportunity to boost his draft stock with a good performance at the combine, as well as Chase Roberts, who was invited. As far as most mock draft and predictions go, it's looking like Chase might fall just a little short of getting drafted in the actual draft, but it seems like a pretty high likelihood that he'll be able to sign for a team and get an opportunity in training camp to prove that he's worth keeping on an NFL roster.
And is there anything you heard from the the interview from Jack Kelly that you found interesting, or Chase Roberts? I'm not sure if he was interviewed or not. Was there anything on that end from media from them?
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
Jack especially really gave a lot of love to the BYU program in kind of his interview, and he was specifically asked some about some up and coming players, and he mentioned Tanabasu on the defensive end, and Isaiah Glasker both, um, just really supporting his former teammates and showing a lot of love to the program and his coaches that really helped him step up and become the potential NFL player that it looks like he's going to become.
It's really cool. I didn't catch the full interview from Jack Kelly, but the fact that some of his how he would train for BMX is kind of similar to how he trained for just being a linebacker and preparing for the NFL. I thought that was very interesting that some of those exercises are very similar, and so I didn't
Yeah,
really
you wouldn't think
wasn't
that
really
that would
thinking about
Carry
that.
over, huh? But yeah, that was super interesting. Super cool.
Yeah. And then we also wanted to note that Garrison Grimes and Will Farron are also at the combine too, hopefully being able to make some roster spots. I know Will was pretty automatic in his career at BYU, and so we're wishing them the best of luck as they prepare for the NFL.
Yeah, as we saw, we saw Will
And
Ferrell.
have a little bit of dip in consistency in his last season at BYU, but we know that he has the kind of level to definitely become an NFL kicker. So best of luck to him and Garrison Grimes as well.
And that's going to do it for today from the Daily Universe Sports Talk. Zach, thank you so much for joining me. And as always, we'll see you next week where we'll have some updates on BYU's road trip against Cincinnati and West Virginia. And I know, isn't fall camp start tomorrow? Or not fall camp, but spring football?
Spring football starts tomorrow, so big stuff.
Happening in BYU sports. Thanks so much for having me along today. Always relish the opportunity to get to chat about some BYU sports. So thanks, Caleb.
Right. We'll talk to you guys later.